And now, from God's Unchanging Word Studios in New Orleans, we are pleased to bring you news, nuggets, and insights with today's host, Tom Carey.
Well, greetings, everyone, and welcome to God's Unchanging Word, and another edition for our news, nuggets, and insights. And today is Friday, June 18, 2021. I got a powerful program, a lot of information, so I'm going to get right into it today. House bill allows abortion and chimera research. I don't know if you know what that is, but it's disgusting. I'm going to talk to you about that today. Then we're going to have the 10-story giant in Nebuchadnezzar. And we're going to be pulling in some video from a couple years ago, tying it all in together. Then the elect. How does one become one of the elect? Interesting question. We never talk about that very often, but we're going to talk about it beginning today and carry it through to next week. But let's start with Happy Father's Day, Father Day weekend. And we try to pay tribute every year as we do to Mother's Day. So we want to begin our program today with a little short video on Father's Day. Play that video. Not the only one who does corny Father's Day joke. Must have been a lot of you guys out there doing the exact same thing. All right, let's get right into this. Israel has a new prime minister. Benjamin Netanyahu is out after 12 years of service through a coalition we'll talk more about next time, including Arabs on the coalition which ousted Benjamin Netanyahu. Naftali Bennett was sworn in as Israel's new prime minister. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Sunday blasted President Biden's policy approach to Iran in what they call a scorched earth final address to the parliament, comparing the U.S. return to Iran nuclear deal to President Franklin Roosevelt declining to bomb the train tracks to Auschwitz when he had the opportunity. This was back in 1944 at the height of the Holocaust. U.S. President Franklin Roosevelt refused to bomb the railway leading to the extermination camps and refused to bomb the gas chambers, which would have saved millions of our people, he said. We hope for others to save us, and when they didn't come, in the face of the threat of extermination, he said, we were helpless. He said, our voice was not heard among the nations, and we had neither a state or an army at that time he's referring to. He said, but today, we do have a voice. We have a state, and we do have defensive power. In other words, according to his policy, he's not going to go down without a fight this time if Iran gets the nuclear bomb, which the United States seemed deliberately deciding to go back in to give him that possible option in a few short years. All right, let's get on. We'll talk more about that in the weeks and then, of course, the years to come. All righty, you can't make it up. Boris Johnson, the British Prime Minister, he opened up the G7 conference for 2021. You're not going to believe this powerful, dynamic, I'm saying this with humor, address that he gave at the very beginning of a very shaky start for the G7. He said we're building back for a woke world is what they're looking at. I've got a short video here for about 2 minutes long, so let's play this opening address.
I think that we have a huge opportunity to do that because as G7, we are united in our our vision for a cleaner, greener world, a solution to the problems of climate change. And in those ideas, in those technologies, in which we're all addressing together, I think there is the potential to generate many, many millions of high-wage, high-skill jobs. And I think that is what the people of our countries now want us to focus on. They want us to be sure that we're beating the pandemic together and discussing how we'll never have a repeat of what we've seen, but also that we're building back better together and building back greener and building back fairer and building back more equal and how shall I, in a more gender neutral and perhaps a more feminine way. How about that, apart from anything else? So those are some of the objectives that we have before us at Carbis Bay. Thank you all very, very much.
Unbelievable. Another. No, don't cut this. Just let this run. I mean, like, I hope you feel the same way as I do. Somebody ought to buy that man a comb first. But another Israelite nation whose leader just seems to flounder around. Now we all going to become a feminine world? Unbelievable. But that's what, when you see, and I'm going to bring out what the G7 is talking about in the billions of dollars, President Obama went on the apology tour, and now President Biden is going on the giveaway tour. Wait till you see how much they're giving away. And what he has signed to give away, he has no legal authority for most of it. So it's going to bring a can of worms open up in the very near future. All right, let's get into some of the programming today now. Women's Health Protection Act. This is our Congress continually talking about how God is removing the wisdom of our leaders. This is a bill. It's called Abortion Without Limitations. 224 Democrats back the elimination all pro-life laws, eliminating them. Any pro-life law across the nation, every state, cut them all. There'll be no more, if this passes, no more pro-life laws going on out there. The bill would codify Roe versus Wade, legal abortion in federal law, the goals that President Biden set during his 2020 campaign. His 48 co-sponsors in the Senate and 176 co-sponsors in the House of Representatives, all Democrats. 224 co-sponsors represent 80% of the Democratic coalition, according to Newsweek, according to this vote. This egregious, deceptively named bill is the latest example of Washington's Democrats' extreme abortion agenda. This radical bill would destroy existing pro-life protections at the state level and prevent pro-life limitations from being enacted. From that time on, that's it. There'll be no more pro-life actions coming in. Saying this is a direct attack on the will of the people. The majority of the people do not support these pro-abortion laws, but they're going to do it anyway. Now, in the law, it's going to allow a number of things to be able to take place. This is one. So I want you to, I don't know if you even want to see this, or just sit down and get ready for this. Scientists vote to grow babies and kill with research use. Deliberately growing babies, the embryos, and the fetuses, just so they can kill them and use them for research. So now human beings become like mice. Unbelievable. But this is part of it. The international group of scientists has ditched the ethical guidelines to allow them to pursue grisly experiments that would grow unborn babies in the womb for 40 days for the sole purpose of killing them for dubious research. Yesterday, the International Society of STEM Research, an international nonprofit and professional organization of the STEM scientists, issued new guidelines governing the research with ethical implications. The guideline lift restrictions on certain types of unethical research that manipulate, alter, or destroy the human embryos. With the new law, they will allow them to incorporate what these international scientists are putting forth to the rest of the world. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what happens to a person's mind that you got an actual human being that they grow on purpose just to kill for research. Unbelievable. So now, this is another part of that, allowing that to come in to our society. The Senate kills the GOP legislation to prohibit certain human-animal chimeras. In case you don't know what that is, we're going to talk about that today. The U.S. Senate on Thursday voted along party lines to kill the Republican amendment to a technological development bill aimed at banning the experiments to create certain types of human-animal chimeras. There was a bill to stop this. It was a Republican bill, and of course the Democrats had the control of the government, and it was just voted right out. So now they're not only going to allow, if these bills get through, to allow the killing of babies, growing them and killing them, it's also going to allow this to come in. The bill to allow human-animal chimera research. Allowing human-animal chimera research, a human-animal chimera is an organism that may possess both human and animal cells, characteristics, or tissues. These two representatives, Chris Smith and Mike Braun, introduced the Human-Animal Chimera Prohibition Act, and that was done on, I believe it was May 25th. Yes, May 25th, which prohibits the research involving human and animal chimeras. They're putting these two together, human cells with animal cells. So it was put forth on the 25th to prevent that. Just 2 days later, the Senate killed the bill. In other words, they're going to allow this also. This is where our nation is going. When you remove God's laws in the way God says, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not murder, this kind of research coming in, 2015 was the deciding point of our nation. And I believe we've made that point very clear over the years. We're going to pull it in together even more now as we move closer to the end of this 7-year cycle, which we are beginning this Day of Atonement 2021, which will end next year in 2022. Unbelievable what's taking place. I think we're going to see a lot of really serious negative problems come out of all of this stuff in the very, very near future. Biden reversed the ban on the stem cell research. All of this tying in together all at the same time. He's banning, there was a bill that put through that banned stem cell research to certain limitations. Well, that bill now has been reversed. So now they can go back into doing whatever stem cell research they want. That giving them the power to be able to grow the babies to kill them or to grow human animal tissue all at the same time. This is from 2 years ago from The Guardian. A human pig combination. 2017 scientists from the Salk Institute of California tried to grow the first embryos containing cells from humans and pigs. Then they grew a human mouse. They grew this human ear on top of a mouse. In a 2-week limit on the growth of human characteristics, allowing the transportation of the chimeric embryos into hybrids or onto animals. They're continuing to test these bizarre things that's taking place. Look what God says in Isaiah 66, verses 15 through 17. It says, "For behold, the Lord will come with fire." Now, this is talking about the rage and the anger that God has when you see the verse that comes out that if you were not living in the time we're living in today, you would have not been able to put this together. Watch what God had put to the prophet Isaiah. He says, like with his chariots in a whirlwind, and to render his anger and fury with his rebuke his flames of fire. With the fire and by his sword the Lord will plead with all flesh, and with the slain of the Lord shall be many. They that sanctify themselves and purify themselves in the gardens behind one's tree, in the midst of eating swine's flesh, and the abomination and the mouse. It's interesting that this is all tied in together. So is God, what Isaiah was looking at, the warning of the talking about swine's flesh and the mouse and putting all this together with human beings, more than just eating, the possibility of what we're looking at today, all these different stem cell research, and God says he's going to just consume them all together. He's coming with anger when you see all of this. About the abomination, well, this is certainly an abomination before God. This House bill will allow human and animal chimera research. So now what is a chimera? So there's two primary definitions for the chimera. One is a fire-breathing Shemos in Greek mythology, having a lion's head and a goat's body and a serpent's tail. I want you to pay close attention to that picture. All right, so let's leave that picture up there. So you see the serpent's tail and you see the fire. So everything you're looking at here is a counterfeit of what God describes many of his warnings at the end time at what's coming. The second one is an imaginary monster compounded of incongruous parts. Very much like we're looking at the chimeras, what they're trying to develop today. So now, let's go show you how this all kind of fits in. Greek mythology and the beast of Revelation 13. All right, so God gives us a description of Satan's beast power combined at the end of days. Now, I'm going to take this story and I'm going to tie this into another story that's coming, talking about the giant. All right, so a giant. So you remember in Daniel's day that the king resurrected this giant statue and edifice to him so that whenever the music played, everyone had to bow down to him. Here we are now. All this research is going on. We having this counterfeits coming out of these chimeras. We got all this research, and in the middle of it all, what's coming? The rise of the beast in Revelation. All of this is not by accident. This is just not coincidental. I believe God is revealing to us at the beginning of a warning of things that are right at our doorstep. And we need to pay attention to all of this. The beast of Revelation 13 is the same combined powers as described in Daniel's four beasts of the individual beast in Daniel 7. All right, so now we know Daniel 7, we have Revelation, very much the same thing. We have different types of beasts, and it's because of this. We're given the information from Daniel or the beast powers looking backwards in history. So if we're reading it today, when we go into the Bible, we look back ways. So as we're looking back ways, we're looking at the development and the building of these nations, one right after the other. However, in Revelation, we're moving forward. So we're looking at the reestablishment of all those nations being put together, and we see them going forward as one beast. So God gives us a description of the beast powers looking forward when we look at Revelation. So now, in the Greek mythology, Daniel 7, verses 9 and 10, that I beheld thrones were cast down, and the Ancient of Days did sit, whose garment was as white as snow, and the hair of his head like the pure wool, and the thrones was like the fiery flames, and his wheels as burning fire. So now let's pay attention to that. And look at this. And the fiery stream issued and came forth from before him. So we're looking at this counterfeit, very similar to what God's describing in Daniel. So Satan takes what God describes as a warning, creates a counterfeit, and says, don't look at it. It's amazing what Satan does to counterfeit things. So then he puts in the very eyes of what God says don't do, and he has people doing. Going on. These combined powers will exist and be in control at the time of the return of Jesus Christ. All of this stuff is now at the beginning stages of beginning to be magnified and to grow right before our very eyes. Revelation 13, verse 7 says, and it was given him to make war with the saints and to overcome them. Now put that in highlighted color there. People in the church today honestly think that no harm could ever come near them, and the God says, no harm come nigh thy dwelling. But God did not tell us we're not going to have to struggle and fight through to maintain the faith once delivered. In fact, he warns us to hold fast to the very end. And here he tells us right here that Satan will at the end time overcome the saint. Won't destroy them, but the power that the world's going to have, that this beast power is going to have, is going to overcome this entire world. And we will have to be rescued. And God's going to come back a second time, the Bible says, and rescue his elect. We'll talk more about that next time. So now, we talked about some of this just recently in exposing the elect. And by the way, this Sabbath, I'll be doing part 2 of this sermon, exposing the elect, so you don't want to miss this. We talked about how God's going to come the second time in Isaiah 11:11 to rescue the remnant of his elect. So now, as we look at all this, we put it together, let's take now a look at this picture with that serpent's tail. Very reminiscent of something else in the book of Revelation. Notice the specific. This creature's tail is a serpent's tail. Look at its face and the fire that comes out of it. It reminds us of what's described in Revelation chapter 9. Revelation chapter 9, verse 1. And the fifth angel sounded, and I saw a star fall from heaven to the earth, and to him was given the key to the bottomless pit. And he opened the bottomless pit, and there rose a smoke out of the pit as the smoke of a great furnace. Interesting that we see the fire, this dragon, the serpent, out of its tail, going on, as the smoke of a great furnace, and the sun and the air were darkened by the reason of the smoke of the pit, and there came out of the smoke locusts upon the earth, and to them was given power as the scorpions of the earth have power. So they build this chimera, the one they're using Greek mythology, that Satan inspired to be able to look like the warning that God shows us in Revelation, to discount it like it means nothing. But going on, verse 7, and the shapes of the locusts were like unto the horses prepared for battle, and in their heads was crowns like of gold, and their faces were the faces of men. And they had in their tails scorpions, and there were stings like their tails, and the power was to hurt men for 5 months. So what we're looking at here is the type of a war that's coming out. It could be a plague. It could be something. It could be something like some kind of a beast that's going to be scorched that God's going to release. The very first verse is something that we need to pay attention to, because you see there's a bottomless pit. Satan's also going to be cast into a bottomless pit for 1,000 years. But there's a pit there that this angel that was cast down, that is describing it as if God now is taking some of his protection away, like piece by piece, just like he did with the prophet Job. And in Job, you see that God says, oh yeah, you can go hurt him, but only go this far. And then a little bit further, he goes just a little bit further. So what we're looking at here in the seals, and this is the fifth seal, the fifth seal actually begins around the time with the persecution of the elect. So what you're looking at here is that God allows this fallen angel now to open up, to unleash evil upon this world. And the pictures that I'm using there of the helicopter next to the scorpion is what the Worldwide Church of God had taught for decades, what this was very resemblant, looked like from the description that was going on here. So here you have all of this coming out. So what it is exactly, we don't know, but you will know from the time that this is unleashed, it's going to last for 5 months. This is very important. All of this tied in together. Seems interesting now that all this chimera research is coming at the time when this beast power now is beginning to rise up, and we're moving closer and closer to beginning to have the seals of Revelation being opened up on this world. Let's go on. Now, let's tie a lot of this in now to some new giant 10-story sculpture that's going to be visiting in Phoenix. I've actually got the story here in 2 videos. One of them's a promotion and one is the news. So between the two, it's about 5 minutes total. So I want to play, because I want you to see what's going on here, how the world can take this and begin to change this, very similar to the timing with Nebuchadnezzar and his great statue. Not that this is being used that way, but it certainly has the power to be able to develop into that. Let's play the first one.
Public art in all its forms has been around for centuries. Iconic must-visit tourist attractions, and we, this reporter included, just can't resist snapping selfies. At its best, public art challenges us, sparking big conversations about civic issues. It can also bring mega tourist dollars and support the local economy. On this side of the pond, a group of entrepreneurs are trying to fund an ambitious project to do just that. It's part statue, part business, part museum, part foundation, part gathering place, all somehow in one experience.
I mean, it's gigantic, and it's unusual, and it's magnificent, and it uses technology actually to celebrate humanity.
It's a giant, more than 10 stories high, wrapped in an LED skin. It moves its head and its arms too. The designers say it's all about human potential and a greener future.
The world has to change, and the Giant wants to be part of this change and inspire people to reach their full potential and help save this planet.
Their goal: put a colossal statue in 21 cities, each one highlighting the giants in their community.
It's going to hook into the communities, and it's going to offer something really positive and also something fun and also something inspiring.
And no need to take a traditional selfie. The Giant does it for you. And after the year we've all had, reconnecting locally and globally is exactly what we need.
Now, guys, the whole idea is that these giant statues will showcase giants in their communities. Well, we thought we would highlight and showcase one of the giants in ours. Take a look at this. It's Al on the giant
look at that.
statue.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
I've never seen you so
that's
tall.
so cool.
Or thin.
So you're on a Doppler radar, and now
That's a
pretend.
little.
I would go and visit that. I'd take a selfie with that
Al,
giant.
that's really cool.
Yeah, except it doesn't exist, but that's okay.
But I'm saying one day.
Hey, Molly, how much are these things going to cost?
Do we know?
Steep price tag, Al. So they're looking at about $18 million per statue.
Wow. You're
so it
worth
could be
it.
about 2-3 years until we see that first giant.
Okay.
Worth it, though, if we can see Al up there.
Exactly.
Heck yeah. Thank you, Molly.
Thanks,
Thank you
Molly.
for that.
Definitely.
$18 million. We have Al Roker, a weatherman, jacking the giant. Yeah, that's definitely what we all need after COVID, right? A 10-story, $18 million statue. Now think about this. How are you going to use this? What are you going to, all the stuff that they told you? I'm going to show you a promotion in just a minute. But I can see who has the money and the power to use these. You know, I can see on Sunday sunrise service we have the Pope out there doing his service on this giant, and the whole world worshiping at this feet of this beast. I mean, I don't see anything good eventually. I see this as another means of being able to control people down the road. So anyway, that's just my thoughts going in, and maybe it won't happen, but anything that's been created usually gets turned for evil rather than good. Now, they got a 4-minute promotion, and watch how warm they play this thing up that they're doing. Let's play the promotion.
If at first the idea is not absurd, then there's no hope for it. Albert Einstein. People of the world, welcome to the Giant. The visitor attraction for the 21st century. The exhibition space featuring the Giant Experience, a glorious celebration of the great men and women of your country, inventors, artists, scientists, celebrities, and athletes. The viewing tower. See the city from the shoulders of a giant. The roof garden. New dimensions in retail, gastronomy, and special events for diversity of occasions. The world's tallest moving sculpture. Its head moves. Its arms move. It speaks and sings. A place to behold heroes and superheroes. A space to celebrate the great and the good, the game changers, the icons of your city and country. Every hour, the Giant transforms into an extraordinary person, from sports, science, characters, your favorite heroes, and recites poetry and words of wisdom to the crowds below. A space to celebrate the great and the good. The great men and women who have made this world a better place to live in. We become a giant, an experience to share and remember for a lifetime. There's nothing like it on the planet. Imagine you can be the giant. The Giant transforms into a stage and a backdrop for festivals, concerts, performances, and special events. Let the party begin! If I have seen further, it is by standing on the shoulders of giants. The Giant. Coming to 21 cities in 2021. Awaken the giant in you.
Wow. Think about that. I've actually already gotten emails come to my computer of conspiracies of what's going on with this creature. So there's going to be a lot more about that going on. So anyway, I wanted to bring that out and then tie this in together because, see, there's some interesting correlations going on here. The EU and Daniel's prophecy. This is from 2 years ago. We brought this out in 2 NNIs. And you go online if you'd like to see this. We go into more detail. From July 12, 2019, and then February 7th, 2020, talking about Nebuchadnezzar and the giant. We talked about what was called at the time Daniel 2 Project, I believe it is. Yeah, the Daniel 2 Project, how these people came together and to create this actual statue to tour the nation to be able to talk about the story in Daniel 2. In its concept, it has merit of what they're trying to do. I believe COVID probably stopped a lot of the travel. And here we talked about what it was all about, the replica of the statue, and what they were trying to do. And the goal here is to go into every city to talk about when they bring this giant in, when they're looking at it, to bring the young people in to teach Bible. And again, it has merit for what it was doing. If you wanted to go online, it was the website was Daniel2image.com. I'm pretty sure it's still there. But the latest that I found was a year ago of information currently going on with that. So probably it's been on hold because of COVID. So just here's a few of the pictures that you're looking at, and that's when it was in Vegas. You see it standing there. The statue was actually made for one tree. It was a redwood that was 127 years old, and it's finished out at 36 feet tall. So this is a longer video, but it takes it from the beginning, and I thought it was fascinating. So I thought I'd take a moment today because we have so many new listeners over the last 2 years. You're probably not even aware that we had this in our archives, so that this thing actually does exist. So sit back, prop your feet up, get some popcorn, and take a look at this Daniel 2 project. That last shot was actually on display in Las Vegas. What an interesting place to start, too. Talking about Babylon. The end time, there's going to be a beast power. It's going to be resurrecting the ancient Babylon, coming back again. Daniel 2, God says, verse 31, "You, O king, behold a great image, and the great image whose brightness was excellent stood before you. In the form there was terrible. The image of the head was of fine gold, and his breast and his arms of silver, his belly and his thighs of brass, his legs of iron, and his feet part iron and part clay." And thus we see now the beginning of the establishment of Europe going on right now. The head of gold was Babylon, 605 to 539 BC. The breast of silver was Persia, 539 to 311. The thighs of brass being Greece, and of course we know the legs of iron and the feet of clay and iron. The 10 toes, partly clay and partly iron. We're seeing that mix come together right now in Europe. So it's quite interesting as this image came out a couple years ago. Now we got a 10-story image coming out. All of this beginning to rise as we're watching and witnessing the United States playing a role to give it the funding and support to begin to raise up this very beast power that God warned us at the end of the time is going to overtake this world. Going on with these descriptions in Daniel chapter 2, 20 and 21. Daniel answered and said, "Blessed be the name of God forever and ever, for the wisdom and the might are his. He changes the times and the seasons. He removes kings, and he sets up kings." We're going to see that change taking place more rapidly in the very few years that we have left. In this image of Daniel 7, the kingdoms were as animals. The image described in Daniel 2 is repeated in Daniel 7 in the forms of animals, which is a different kind of kingdom. Daniel 2 and 7 are carried into Revelation chapter 13 and chapter 17, talking about it in different forms. The interesting thing is that when these forms all come together, there's another beast that drives this beast. It says, "And I saw the woman set upon the scarlet beast, full of the names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns." Talking about the woman of the beast, as we understand, is the church, Catholic Church, who's going to drive, who the world is going to hate before it's all over. And the beast power that comes up is literally going to kill that driving force. And you're going to see that when the second beast plays. We're going to talk more about that as we go forward. But the reason I put all of this together for you today is because we're talking about now there's 2 events taking place with President Biden all of a sudden going on to establish the foundation of this beast power finally being given life at the end time. All right, let's take a break. We're going to come back. We're going to talk about how does one become one of the elect. But let's take a break and have this Father's Day point. I'll be right back. Nice little catchy beat to that. Welcome back. All right, so now let's get into our nuggets portion of the program today is how does one become one of the elect? Now you might think that's a simple question. And if you've been in the church for a lot of years, you can probably explain that very easily. What if you're a new person? But what if you're trying to explain it to a family member or a friend who God's given you the ear to talk to explain about the elect at the end time? So I'm going to take it from the basics here. So who are the elect? How does Satan know how to distinguish who they are? There are literally thousands of different Christian churches around the world. I brought this out last week, so I wanted to bring it one more time. Globally, there are 2 billion Christians that are separated into thousands, literally thousands, of denominations. You have the Pentecostal, Presbyterian, Lutheran, Baptist, the Apostolics, the Methodists, and the list goes on. The estimations show that there's at least 200 Christian denominations within the United States and a staggering 45,000 globally, according to the Center of the Study of Global Christianity. So they're everywhere. Even in God's church, that all came out of the worldwide Church of God, there's over 500 independent split-off groups that are continually to grow every single year. But there is a dividing line, and Satan knows what that dividing line is. And do we? Let's talk about what that is. The dividing line, we're talking about being part of the elect. Here is a list. This is just a part of it, what I could fit in one page, showing you all the list, and you can keep that up there for a minute, Jeff. Christianity, 2.3 billion people. Islam, 1.9. Secular, 1.1. Hinduism, Buddhism, and it just goes on and on and on. But God says the elect is very few. In fact, he calls them a remnant, ragtail. But according to this list, this Christian list of those who supposedly believe in Christ, this 2.3 billion doesn't sound like a remnant, does it? So, how does Satan know the difference between Christianity and true believers? Of that list of approximately 2.4 billion Christians, 1.2 billion are Catholics alone. Largest sect of people who believe in Christ from day one, right? The second, who are Sabbath keepers. Now, you're going to see that when Satan goes after these people, he's going after those who do two things. They have the commandments of God, and they have the testimony of Jesus Christ. To have the commandments of God, purely from what the Bible says, there's 10 of them. You don't get to pick 9, and you don't get to change anything, and you don't get to pick which day you decide the fourth commandment of the Sabbath is. God very clearly defines that. So we have the dividing line begins here as people who keep the 10 commandments. Of those, the Sabbath keepers. Of the Sabbath keepers, there, according to the finding, there are between 2 to 3 million. Of the 2 to 3 million, approximately 2 million are Seventh-day Adventists. The Seventh-day Adventists do keep the Sabbath, but they do not keep the holy days according to the plan of God. Therefore, Leviticus 23, and write that down. If you're new and you haven't studied it, go to Leviticus 23. God says, these are my Sabbath. Not the Jews, they're not anybody else's, they are God. He begins with the seventh day, and then he begins to list 7 other holy days that he declares as Sabbath. So those are part of that. So of the 2 to 3 million, we have just eliminated another 2 million. So now we're down to 1 million or less who are actually following the laws of God the way he describes. And then I can get into a lot more specifics, and it continues to break down smaller and smaller and smaller. So then you get down to where they have a remnant, the elect. How does one become a part of that body of believers? It's not an organization. It is a spiritual organism of Jesus Christ, carrying the Spirit of the Father and Jesus Christ. Now, you can't just go join it. God has to put you in it, that organism, not that organization. All right, so look at this is out of John 6. No man can come to me except the Father which had sent me, draw him, and I will raise him up at the last day. So somewhere, God the Father has to call you, touch your mind, touch your heart, and turn you over to his Son, Jesus Christ. That is the beginning stage. How does that happen? In some cases, we don't know. But what if there is a case that we do know? What if God, and I'll talk about this next time, what if God heard your prayer for your family member? Wouldn't that be interesting? I believe we can show proof that that happened. All right, so now, but let's go on today. Matthew 22. So he said to his servant, the wedding is ready, and they were bidden to come, right? This is, you go through, I don't have time to go through them all. So God tells them, well, those who were called, they didn't come. Talking about his own people rejecting him. So he says, go into the highways and get as many people as you can come and bring him in as a guest. But now, another separating point. You can't come to the wedding of Jesus Christ any way that you want to. You have to put on a certain garment. And you might say, well, God's not into clothing. Well, he's into spiritual clothing. This wedding shows us that. He said to him, friend, how did you get in here without a wedding garment on? And the person was speechless. So he said to the king, said to his servants, bind him hand and foot, take him away, cast him into outer darkness, and there should be weeping and gnashing of teeth. So God's saying that when God calls you to be a part of the body to the wedding feast, you just can't come the way you are. It takes something to get in. When you get in, God's going to be looking for you. That's where we get to many are called, few are chosen. The wedding garment. Let's take a quick look at it. I think we all understand what we're talking about here, but just in case, let's take a look. So I saw him, said, sir, he said to me, these are they which came out of great tribulation, have washed their robe. You see, the clothing that they wore, in that clothing, it was clean, it was pressed, it was pure, it was white. And how do you get that way with your clothing? The blood of Jesus Christ. There is no other way. There's no other God. There is no Allah. There is no Buddha. There is no Muslim faith. It's through Jesus Christ alone. And I want to tell you something with this nation that was founded under God. Every time we take in our White House, in our Congress, in our leadership, and we give another God a foothold, God hates it and brings curses on this nation. There is no politically correct in God's eyes. There's no politically correct in his throne. There is only Jesus Christ, and he is the only way. That message has to resound. So any minister who's out there who's trying to give a foothold to anyone else except Jesus Christ, trying to be politically correct, has distanced himself and is in the line camp of Satan. That isn't coming from me. That's coming from your holy Bible. And you need to be aware of that. We cannot align. We cannot associate with. There is no negotiating with evil. God hates it, and he's coming back to set this world straight. Let's go on. Look in Revelation 12. The dragon was wroth with the woman and went to make war with the remnant of her seed, which keep the commandments and have the testimony of Jesus Christ. Now, this world can deceive itself that they're doing what God says to do. But believe it or not, you can't deceive Satan. He knows who they are, and he's going to go after them. That's the remnant. You want to be part of the remnant? Then you have to be doing what God says to do, and Satan will be aware. And God will grant you protection too, by the way. So what makes the difference? Those who are willing to count the cost, you see in Luke 14. So there were great multitudes with him, and he turned. So he said to them, if any man comes to me and does not hate, or I've been told in the church many other ways of saying love less. In other words, you have to love God first, is what this is trying to say. His father and his mother, his wife and his children, brothers and sisters, and yes, even his own life, cannot be my disciple. You see, this first part with brothers and sisters making those choices, many people in the world today, they're having to make those choices. Because you see, not everybody in the family is called at one time. But if you've understood the truth, you need to stand on it. And then you begin your prayers that God will call the rest of you. But if you don't, many are called, few are chosen, you don't get to be chosen, and your prayers will probably not be answered for your family. But here's what's really important, in even your own life. There is a generation that's going to be alive before the return of Jesus Christ. They're going to have to make that choice. Put your life on the line to obey Jesus Christ. I believe we are that generation, which I'll talk about more another time. Whosoever does not bear his cross and come after me, and that cross is actually the staros, means the stake, will not take his stake and come after me, cannot be my disciple. Making the difference? Those willing to count the cost? For which of you intending to build the tower doesn't sit down first and count the cost, whether he's able to finish it? Thus, after the foundation is laid, he's not able to finish it, and everyone begins to mock him. So he began to build, but he wasn't able to finish. Going on and counting the cost. For what king goes on, makes war against another king? It does not sit down first to consider that he's able with 10,000 to meet him that comes against him with 20,000. Or else, what else is a great way off? He sends off a delegation and he asks for a condition of peace. In other words, if you can't forsake all what God's saying, you can't be one of Jesus' disciples. In other words, how do you become part of the elect? First of all, you have to be blessed for whatever reason it was that God called you. And we may never know in this life. But second, you got to make decisions. You got to count the cost. You've got to be willing to put it all on the line to follow Jesus Christ. And you have a chance to be a part of the elect. Our calling, God says he will extend to our families. Look what it says here. I will establish my covenant between me and you and your descendants after you in their generations for an everlasting covenant to be God to you and to your descendants after. All right, now let's go on. This is laying the foundation for next week. Our covenant and our calling extended to our families. Look, God says here, I will establish my covenant between me and you. This is found in Genesis 17:7. And your descendants after you in their generations for an everlasting covenant to be God to you and to your descendants after you. Let me back that up again. So now, what about this? What about the calling God's given you and I that he's offering to our family? How much is that worth? We're going to talk about that next week. I'm going to give you hope when you're in the middle of despair that maybe no one's listening to you right now. There is hope down the road. So make sure you stay tuned next week for that part. All right, let's begin to wrap it up on our program from the home office today. Two special NNIs that went out last week. That went out, I don't actually have the dates on here. I should have had them. I thought I did, but I don't. Let me back that up. Is the Memorial Day, and then one right after that this year. That just went out. There were two important NNIs that tied into the sermons that were given. So those are in the mail right now. Also, we want to announce, the first time I'm announcing it, right after we put it out, it was in the quarterly, a lot of things began to change. So what we've opted to do to keep order, and because of manpower and everything else, we're going to cancel Daytona Beach site this year. All right, so we're going to cancel the Daytona Beach feast site this year. So we're hoping that you'll join us at one of our other sites, Fort Walton or Myrtle Beach, which is not too far away, depending on where you had to travel. So we'll talk about next year if we're going to be able to do that again, go back in there or not. But for this year, we had to cancel the Daytona Beach site. So I want you to make note so you don't make plans to go there. And if you're making plans, so you can make other plans going forward. In the mail last week also, it's actually 2 weeks ago, the quarterly in this month's sermon offering is history repeating itself. All right, so that goes out. Now, next week, this is very important. Now I'm announcing something, not tomorrow, not this Sabbath, but next Sabbath. I'm going to cover this. I'm also going to cover this in News and Nuggets. So in the News and Nuggets, I'm going to talk about more of the news part of this 15% global tax and address the question, did President Biden just propose the beginning of America's own destruction? So we're going to talk about that next News and Nuggets. And in the sermon, I'm going to begin the sermon with this. I don't know if I can get it done at one time or not, but if I can, I will. But I got a feeling it's going to take more than one sermon. This is very, very important. It comes on the heels of this sermon, Exposing the Elect, Part 2. I'm doing that sermon tomorrow. Make sure you tune in for that sermon. If you didn't catch part 1, go online and take a look at part 1 first. And it will be more impacting to understand part 2 if you've seen part 1 first. So if you have nowhere to go tomorrow for church services anywhere, tune in right here. We'll be live streaming, exposing the elect. That's it. There you have it. Not too bad. We didn't run as much overtime as I was afraid of with all those videos. So let's close our program out today with a video we played not too long ago, but we had requests for it again, the Lord's Prayer. I'll be right back. Wow, what a great video, huh? I'm glad we played that again. And God says, thy kingdom come, and it can't be soon enough when you look at what's going on. I want to take a moment to thank everybody for all your support, by helping us to get this message out. We're beginning to receive phone calls and emails and information from people scattered all across the United States and Canada, and even other parts of the globe right now. So if you're looking for others to meet with, so are other people. Maybe we can help connect, brother. So if you're looking for a church in your area, I was just on the phone just yesterday with another person in California. I talked to another one just a couple of months ago in California, actually looking to establish churches in Virginia recently and up in Canada. So if you're one and you're looking to get together with other brethren, get in touch. Maybe we can help. We're beginning the foundation of laying a groundwork or a network for brethren to be able to communicate with other brethren on the Sabbath day. So thanks again for writing in. Maybe we can be of help. Well, that's it. That's for our program. And remember, every week, as we ask you, share this program with everyone you know. They're going to love you for it, or not. Till next week, God be with you.